Hello, how are you today? I hope you are well and you are ready to listen to another audiobook about Warhammer 40,000 lore. Let's continue with chaos. Without further ado, let's get to the second part of the article. The Gods of Chaos. Khorne, the Blood God. Quote, servants of the Lord of Slaughter stood from horizon to horizon, filling the air with their shrieks, gibbers, and howls of blood. The battle banners strained in the coppery wind that blew across the ranks. It was a banner of deepest, darkest red, with but a single rune and a legend of simple devotion: blood for the Blood God. At some secret signal, all fell silent, and then came a single shriek of dark and bloody loyalty, a pact of hate and death. It echoed from leathered skins, and grew to shake the clouds. And far above the demons' ranks, there was an answering roar of bloody approval, torn from Khorne's brazen throat. End of quote from the Tome of Blood. Khorne is the Blood God, the god of war, murder and violent death. He draws his power from the blood and skulls collected for him by his followers. The sheer amount of bloodshed and death in the galaxy currently has made Khorne the most powerful chaos god. He sits upon a brass throne, which rests on a massive mountain of skulls, each taken in his name by a devotee. In every direction, as far as he can see, the ground is covered with shattered bones and rotted corpses. As the god of battle, Khorne bestows his favor on those who demonstrate martial prowess. Great warriors are often subjects of Khorne's interest. The followers of Khorne are almost all uncontrollable fighters who excel at the art of killing. His warhosts count many savage Heretic Astartes and mutant warriors among their numbers. Khorne's followers share their god's straightforward philosophy on warfare, preferring to charge directly at the foes in order to defeat them in close, usually melee combat. As such, Khorne's followers are generally berserkers that pay little heed to tactics or defense in their frenzy for blood. Khorne frowns upon the use of sorcery, psychic powers and trickery, and those who use sorcery or are psykers should look elsewhere to find a patron for the studies. Khorne is the most powerful of the Chaos Gods, given that he is empowered by war and fighting. The ceaseless conflict in the Warhammer 40,000 universe ensures he gains power constantly. Khorne is a god of war who acts outwardly by seeking the death of others, preferring close combat over ranged weaponry. As such, he is completely opposed to the hedonistic Slaanesh, an inwardly acting god who seeks pleasure in every act and experience. He has a strong distrust of sorcerers and psykers, whom he sees as cowards. This means he is also highly suspicious of Tzeentch, although they are not arch-enemies. Khorne is the Blood God, the angry and murderous lord of battle. He is said to be the warrior god whose bellows of insatiable rage echo through time and space back to the first act of violence ever committed. Devotees of the ruinous powers have debated forcefully about the primogenesis of the Blood God for millennia. Some hold that it was the will of Khorne that first impelled a primitive to seize a rock and brain one of his fellows in a fit of murderous rage, thereby triggering the spiral of violence that fed the chaos power into the formidable force it has become. Others declare that it was the first mortal impulses of fury that breathed life into Khorne, and that he represents the primitive lust for violence lurking in every mortal heart. However, the true disciples of Khorne care nothing for such debates, as they are fully engaged with slaying all that comes to hand. Khorne's followers are the most ferocious warriors in the universe, and the Blood God abhors magic, sorcery, and other unworthy tricks. The blood of Magi is said to make a particularly welcome sacrifice to Khorne's unquenchable thirst. Some justify the slaughter through honor, bravery, or pride, but the most fanatical know that it is only the bloodshed for its own sake that matters. Khorne's disciples believe that his great throne of brass sits upon a mountain of skulls in the midst of a sea of blood, evidence the sacrifice of his countless followers slain in battle and the multitudes killed in his name. They hold that Khorne is the chaos power that embodies mindless and absolute violence, the wild bloodlust that, once unleashed, yearns to destroy everyone within reach, whether they be friend or foe. Such true believers are few in number, and they grow fewer all the time as his devoted followers gleefully send one another into his embrace, knowing that Khorne cares not from where the blood flows. Depictions of Khorne often show him as a titanic, armored figure covered from head to foot in armored plates of strange and alien design. The figure's armor is usually elaborately carved and worked with a repeating skull motif, while his head is covered by a great winged helm showing a bestial, snarling face beneath. In most images, Khorne bears a rune-covered sword or axe, though in more primitive cultures he is often shown only with fists or claw-like hands. In spite of his apparently self-destructive aspects, Khorne is overtly the most potent and active of all the ruinous powers. Endless wars and bloodshed in the mortal realm fuel it with the skulls of the slain, constantly drawn into its raging depths. Khorne needs no honeyed promises or convoluted plots to draw mortals into his realm. The anger and fury lurking just below the civilized demeanor are often more than enough. The path to Khorne's domain can be just as slippery as any represented by the other, more subtle ruinous powers. The instinct of violence is a necessary one in a hostile universe and is even lauded in protectors or liberators. Many societies must literally fight to survive, and they celebrate their members for their ability to defend themselves and others. So it is that soldiers, commanders, and even law enforcers begin the slow slide into Khorne's embrace with the noblest of intentions. A desire to protect their loved ones warps gradually into a determination to fight back against those that threaten them. Martial pride and a sense of brotherhood are fostered to protect against hostile outsiders, and the authorities directly urged to inflict harm against those designated as undesirable. Under the banners of protection, wars are begun that consume whole populations. Under the guise of efficiency, bombs are dropped and death camps are built. Under the proclamation of necessity, billions of lives are destroyed. Outside the constraints of the Imperium, those that go into battle commonly besiege Khorne in one of his warrior god aspects to grant him some measure of his boundless fury. Victories are dedicated to one of his many names, and defeats are repaid with blood sacrifices to win back his favor. Leaders of opposing armies strive to show that the favor of the blood god is with them, and his greatest chaos champions are capable of winning the support of entire planets with the very rumor of their presence. Many of Khorne's mortal followers strive for conquest on a vast scale by training armies and gathering fleets to hurl against the universe. The success or failure is a matter of no import to him, as Khorne waxes strongest wherever mortal ambitions clash, regardless of the outcome. Demons of Khorne. The demons of Khorne are fearsome entities of the kind most commonly associated with terrifying legends. Their horns, fangs, blood-red hides, and blazing eyes leave little doubt as to their murderous intent, and the ferocity is truly matchless. Only a fool treats with the demons of Khorne without a ready source of blood sacrifices to trade for his own life. If a petitioner can evade death long enough, a bargain is easy enough to strike. The ravening entities desire only to be unleashed on a victim, any victim, and joyfully charge into battle at the first opportunity. Of course, such demonic cohorts make for dangerous allies, apt to turn upon any that come within their reach, but for many that serve the purposes admirably. The greater demons of Khorne are known as bloodthirsters and said to be the most favored of his servants. Bloodthirsters exist purely for combat and combat alone. The bloodlust extends far beyond mortal comprehension, and they attack everything within reach with terrible ferocity. They do not know fear other than of Khorne, and act regardless of the cost or consequences, although the usual consequences are death for whatever they face. Their immense pride in their fighting abilities rarely permits them to call upon allies or servants, and they usually rely purely upon their own strength and skill. The rank and file of Khorne's vast demonic legions are called bloodletters. These are said to be formed from the mightiest mortal souls that met the deaths drenched in blood. Reborn as bloodletters, they appear as horned, red-scaled, man-like fiends with elongated skulls and black tongues lolling from fang-filled jaws. They clutch razor-edged hellblades in the talon claws, weapons honed to perfection on the souls of all those that have fallen in battle with the armies of Khorne. They clutch razor-edged hellblades in the talon claws, weapons honed to perfection on the souls of all those that have fallen in battle with the armies of Khorne. Like all demons of Khorne, the ferocity of bloodletters is boundless, and they attack any foe without hesitation. A horde of bloodletters in battle is an almost unstoppable force, their power exponentially increasing in magnitude as the frenzied slaughter continues. Great and terrible beasts also attend the ranks of the Blood Gods' legions, the so-called juggernauts and fleshhounds of Khorne. Fleshhounds are lean and deadly hunters that pursue the prey relentlessly across the trackless realms of chaos. Those with which sight babble about blood-red hounds that hunt them through their dreams, whose rage-filled howls continue to echo in their waking minds. Juggernauts are hulking, bestial amalgams of machine and metal. Piston-like limbs drive the juggernaut's brass-skinned body forward with the force of a battering ram, crushing its victims with appalling force. These monstrous beasts are ridden by demons and chaos champions in battle. Khorne hates and despises the chaos power Slaanesh above all others. The self-indulgent sensuality of the Prince of Pleasure is an affront to the warrior instincts of Khorne. The sense of duty, honor, and self-sacrifice that fuels part of Khorne's existence is an anathema to the followers of Slaanesh, and the very antithesis of their own philosophy of self-indulgent pleasure-seeking. The demonic servants of Khorne and Slaanesh often attack each other on sight, and their mortal followers are often no less eager to join the battle. However, Khorne also has little respect for Tzeentch, the arch-conspirator. Tzeentch's patronage of wizards and manipulators intensifies the antipathy between their respective followers, and they are frequently in conflict. However, both ruinous powers make common cause when the prospect for bloodletting is great, and Tzeentch's unguessable schemes can be advanced through their mutual efforts. At such times the Star of Chaos waxes strong in the mortal realm as the two most potent dark gods temporarily join forces and send their legions to war. Such mercurial pacts seldom endure for long before Khorne's disciples or Tzeentch's manipulators inevitably turn on their erstwhile allies. Such mercurial pacts seldom endure for long before Khorne's disciples or Tzeentch's manipulators inevitably turn on their erstwhile allies. Nergal, the Plague Lord. Quote, "Indeed, the very process of construction and creation foreshadows destruction and decay. The palace of today is tomorrow's ruin, the maiden of the morning is the crone of the night, and the hope of a moment is but the foundation stone of everlasting regret." End of quote from The Lost and the Damned. Nergal is one of the four great chaos gods and is the god of disease and decay, born out of every mortal's fear of death. He is the embodiment of the hungry earth, the carrion crow whose poxes and plagues are inflicted upon all. Nergal's power waxes and wanes over time as his gifts to the myriad worlds are spread, are cured, or simply kill off everything in sight. Many of Nergal's victims will eventually turn to his worship in the hope that it will ward off or ameliorate the torment they suffer at his hands. For entertainment, Nergal will orchestrate plagues and new diseases, such as the Plague of Unbelief, also known as Zombie Plague, and watch bemusedly as the mortals struggle to fight the illness and develop a cure. Many of Nergal's wars are indirectly won simply through the plagues that sweep that land before his armies. Of particular note is Nergal's rot, which gradually changes a victim into a plague-bearer. Nergal's followers tend to have a strong interest in the spread of disease. His worshippers become infected with horrific diseases which cause them to appear as disgusting, bloated and rotting masses of barely recognizable flesh, with many sores and open wounds in which infection and decay are rampant. Occasionally Nergal's followers may become wizened, sickly, thin and pale, while still having great power over disease. His champions become so mutated and putrid that they are impervious to pain and almost impossible to injure. While equal in power with Khorne and Tzeentch, Nergal's power is much less stable. At times, his forces are limitless and unbeatable, numberless rotting armies scouring the land of life. At others, his followers are scattered and weak, hiding in fetid corners of the universe. Nergal's strength lies in stagnancy and decay, as well as the emotion of despair, which puts him in direct opposition to Tzeentch, who embodies hope, ambition and change. Nergal is most commonly called the Lord of the Decay, but he is known many names: the Fly Lord, the Great Corrupter, the Master of Pestilence. The power of Nergal is embodied in entropy, morbidity, disease and physical corruption. Of the four great powers, Nergal is said to be the one most involved with the plight of mortals. Through the gifts of raging fevers and shaking chills, Nergal's hand is upon them from cradle to grave. Few escape the touch of Nergal in their lives. He is sometimes called the Lord of All, because all things, no matter how strong and secure, fall to physical corruption in the end. Every Chaos God embodies the hopes, fears and other strong emotions generated by mortal beings. In the case of Nergal, their fear of death and disease is the source of his greatest power. The mortal's unconscious response to that fear, the desperation to cling to life no matter what the cost, gives Nergal an opening into the souls. The whispered prayer of a parent over a fever-struck child, the anguished pleas of the dying man for one more day of life, these are meat and drink to Nergal. Nergal is typically depicted as an immense, bloated humanoid, his body swollen with putrefaction. His skin is shown as leathery and necrotic, his surface pocked with running sores, swelling buboes and oozing wounds. Internal organs bulging with decay spill through slits in the ruptured skin to hang like bunches of scrofulous grapes around his vast girth. Nergal is often illustrated with hordes of tiny demons bursting forth from its pustules and suckling upon foulness. The deranged worshippers of the Lord of Pestilence say that he concocts diverse contagions to inflict on the material universe for his amusement, and many of the most infectious and horrible diseases are Nergal's proudest creations. It is the belief that those who die caught in the grip of one of Nergal's terrible poxes are swept directly to his realm. Those that sing the praises of Nergal loud enough are sometimes spared so that they can spread his blessings further, for the Church of the Fly Lord is always open to all. Nergal has many supplicants, but there are few with the fortitude to declare themselves as his champions. The few that can survive Great Corruptor's manifold blessings exhibit feverish, morbid energy and a preternatural resistance to physical damage. The power of Nergal waxes and wanes as his pandemics sweep across the galaxy. When untold billions fall prey to the newest plagues, his strength can overshadow that of any of the other Chaos Gods for a period. At other times the power of Nergal withers away to liquescence until circumstances are ripe for it to erupt forth once more. Those that fashion themselves champions of Nergal represent a dire threat to densely populated worlds, where close-packed populations are vulnerable to a single contagion. Ships in the void are particularly vulnerable to disease, and many dying crews have beseeched the Lord of Decay for his intercession. Such was the fate of the Death Guard Legion when it became marooned in the warp on the long journey to Terra during the Horus Heresy. While they lay becalmed in the Imperium, a mysterious contagion spread from one to another of the Death Guard's ships until the entire fleet was infected. Even the reinforced physiology of the Space Marines could not fight off the dire plague as it bloated the guts, distended the flesh and rotted its victims from the inside. It is said that when even the Legion's Primarch Mortarion fell victim to the plague, he cried out to the powers of chaos in his delirium. His desperation to save himself and his legion called forth Nergal, and Mortarion became his champion. Thus, the Death Guard Legion has enjoyed the favour of Nergal for the last 10,000 standard years. Demons of Nergal. The demons of Nergal are truly putrid in their appearance and sickening to look upon. Their flesh pulses with the fever heat of corruption, their innards push through lesions in their putrid skin, and the bodies ooze with sticky slime. In contrast to their hideous appearance, Nergal's demons are cheerful, energetic beings that show a disturbingly friendly demeanor. They are jovial in their work and show great pride in their accomplishments, interpreting the groans of the afflicted as expressions of gratitude justly won by their efforts. The most powerful demons of Nergal are called Great Unclean Ones. Great Unclean Ones are facsimiles of the god himself, both physically and in spirit. Every Great Unclean One is also Nergal himself in some sense, and the followers often refer to them as Papa or Father Nergal. Great Unclean Ones are seldom death-like or morbid in character. In fact, they are usually motivated by the same trivial enthusiasms that drive the living. They are gregarious and even sentimental in their nature, with a remarkable fondness for the followers. They often refer to the followers as the children, and take great pride in their appearance and oddly endearing behavior. The common demons of Nergal are known as plague-bearers. These have a more approximately humanoid shape and lurch along on stick-thin limbs. Plague-bearers have a single eye and a single horn, and chant in a continuous monotone. They are also called the Tally Men of Nergal, as it is said that they constantly strive to enumerate the endlessly changing number of plagues and poxes in the universe. Despite the decrepit appearance, plague-bearers are extremely dangerous in battle. A single scratch from their rusted swords is sufficient to bestow a plague that sends its host to Nergal's realm without delay. The lowliest servants of Nergal are the Nergalings, tiny demons that look like miniature representations of Nergal himself. They are mischievous, agile and constantly active, slinking in the shadows of his champions or gathering in squealing hordes around Great Unclean Ones. Swarms of Nergalings overwhelm their enemies through sheer weight in numbers, using the scrabbling, diseased claws to pull down larger opponents so that they can gnaw at them with filth-caked fangs. Nergal is the age-old enemy of the Chaos Power Tzeentch, the Lord of Change. Their energies come from diametrically opposing beliefs. Tzeentch's power derives from hope and changing fortune, while Nergal's comes from defiance born out of despair and hopelessness. The followers of Nergal often pit themselves against those of Tzeentch in complex political intrigues in the mortal realm, forever attempting to mire his schemes for change in dull-minded conservatism and parochial self-interest. The corrupting influence is often successful in thwarting the architect of fate, and they erode at his accomplishments constantly, safe in the knowledge that whatever survives the collapse into entropy becomes their inheritance. Slaanesh, the Dark Prince of Chaos. Quote, "Take care lest your protests become tiresome. I have asked for so little. Anyone would think that I had asked you to sacrifice yourselves and your sons. And yet, in Slansh's boundless and pleasing mercy, I have asked only for your daughters. Surely you would not deny me my small enjoyments. End of quote from Terrell, Renegade Lord of Undermine. Slaanesh is the Dark Prince of Chaos, the god of pleasure and pain. Slaanesh is the beguiling water, the Great Serpent who lives for pleasure and the experience of the sensations of life and death. All those who live in the pursuit of pleasure risk falling under this god's deceptive charms. Slaanesh is the youngest of the Chaos gods and referred to by the other ruinous powers as the Prince of Chaos. Seductive in the way that only an immortal being can be, Slaanesh is the Chaos god of pleasure, passion, luxury, art, and indulgence. Slaanesh is the manifestation of all hidden vices, cruel passions, and secret temptations that men hide fearfully in their hearts. While not interested in the dirty warfare of Khorne, Korn and Slaanesh are mortal enemies, as Slaanesh acts inwardly upon the mortal psyche by seeking selfish pleasure, while Khorne acts outward to kill others. Slaanesh does enjoy combat of the artistic sort, rewarding those whose fighting is transformed from a means to an end and thus into an art form all its own. Slansh's followers seek pleasure in every experience, and quickly become inured to more mundane things, including sounds and colors. Thus they frequently wear garish, brightly colored armor or clothing which is extravagantly decorated. Worshippers of Slaanesh known for the complete lack of fear, as they see losing a battle as a new experience to be enjoyed. Slaanesh is the youngest and weakest of the major Chaos gods. However, Slaanesh is constantly growing in power due to the corrupt and dark nature that all sentient beings, but particularly the Eldar and mankind, try to keep hidden within their hearts. For even the mere act of thinking about such dark acts of pleasure and vice are enough to give spiritual strength to Slaanesh. It won't be long before Slaanesh sits as an equal of power amongst the other three ruinous powers, and may even rise above Khorne, given time and the incessant quest across the galaxy for pleasure. Slaanesh is also known as the Lord of Pleasure, or the Prince of Chaos. It is the ruinous power dedicated to the pursuit of hedonistic pleasures and the overthrow of constraints. It is said that Slaanesh is the youngest of all the Chaos gods, and was brought into being by the decadence of the galaxy-spanning Eldar civilization. Slowly, over many centuries, the projected lusts and desires of the highly psychic Eldar coalesced in the warp to create the new power. As the entity grew, the Eldar themselves were increasingly affected by its influence, driven to new heights of depravity in pursuit of their jaded lusts. The spiral became tighter as the increasingly frenzied activities of the Eldar spurred Slaanesh towards full wakefulness, even as its dreams stirred the darkest desires. The Eldar race became trapped by its own dark nature, one that asserted itself more and more as Slansh's influence grew. The more it drove them into moral, social and artistic decadence, the more the Eldar fought against it, but it was a hopeless struggle. Slaanesh was like an expanding balloon, straining outwards as pressure built inside, and it was only a matter of time before it bursts. In the moment of Slansh's birth, the golden empire of the Eldar was irrevocably shattered. The terrible psychic scream of the newborn god shattered heaven and earth, its shockwave spreading outward through the warp to deal a numbing blow to the soul of every living thing. It was too much for the psychically attuned Eldar to endure. The souls were drawn into the growing power of Slaanesh and the bodies evaporated as chaos boiled into their minds. The warp energy unleashed by Slansh's birth tore out the heart of the old Eldar Empire and transformed into it the vast region of warp overlap with real space now called the Eye of Terror by mankind. Wherever Eldar populations were densest, the warp literally spilled through their minds and into real space, creating new areas of warp overlap all over the galaxy. The once proud Eldar was left a broken, hunted people scattered through space, bitter with the knowledge that if not for the foolishness, arrogance and hedonism, Slaanesh, the depraved one, the Great Serpent, she who thirsts, would never have been born. Slaanesh represents the locus of the fallen Eldar race's deepest desires, the yearning for luxury and hedonistic overindulgence, the exercise of cruel and unnatural passions, the pursuit of forbidden vices and unspeakable carnality. The Pleasure Lord always holds open the thrilling promise of the forbidden and the exotic beyond the boundaries of moral and societal laws. The siren call of its illicit pleasures draws everything from jaded planetary governors to mass pleasure cults onto Slaanesh's paths. Of all the chaos powers, the Prince of Pleasure can offer the greatest temptations to the common man, those without any desire to be conquering warriors or clever sorcerers. The first weavings of Slaanesh's subtle influence can be as humble as a desire for rest or as simple as an end to hunger, and he is said to capture many souls, both willing and unwilling, in his nets. The followers of the Prince of Chaos pursue ever greater heights of experience, seeking pleasure in increasingly extreme and outrageous fashion. Slaanesh's influence often reaches into the upper echelons of hierarchies, where the greatest luxury and privilege resides, corrupting nobility and wealthy families. It can be seen at its most insidious among those that strive for rectitude, as if the Prince of Chaos takes particular joy in corrupting those that dare to proclaim themselves as upright souls. Even the most pious pontiff must rest sometime, and when he does, the unconscious desires in his dreams betray him to the master of carnal joys. The more civilized society becomes, the more frequently seeds of corruption planted by Slaanesh sprout within it. As leisure becomes widespread, the unconscious wants of the many are led down dark paths by the subtle influence of Slaanesh. Countless worlds have fallen into complete anarchy when Slaanesh pleasure cults became so widespread that all order was lost in an insane frenzy of self-gratification. On many, the fall of the Eldar is reenacted in microcosm as society collapses and the howling winds of chaos ravage the world through the minds of its psychers. The handful of gibbering survivors that are sometimes left behind are so changed by the experience that they can no longer be called in any sense mortal or sane. Certain inquisitors of the Imperium have cultivated a particular loathing of the followers of Slaanesh for the corruption they spread so readily through the Emperor's mortal realm. Their efforts to suppress the pursuit of pleasure inevitably bring an ever-widening wide circle of recidivists, smugglers, criminals, and black marketeers into contact with Slaanesh's mortal adherents. Depictions of Slaanesh show it as an androgynous or hermaphroditic being of unearthly, unnatural and disturbing beauty. Two pairs of slender horns rise from the god's flowing golden hair. Slaanesh is often depicted wearing luxuriantly lined, form-fitting armor and bearing a jade scepter that is said to be his greatest treasure. His worshippers engage in great orgies involving every vice and perversity to praise the Lord of Pleasure, where the death of many through exhaustion and overstimulation is taken to be a sign of the prince's favor. His devotees say that any extremity of sensation or emotion can open communion with Slaanesh, for the echoes of his birth scream reside in every mortal soul. They pursue a rapturous, tortured, orgasmic, drug-fueled state of hypersensuality, the souls burning bright and hot like shooting stars as they plunge ever deeper into the psychic maelstrom that is Slaanesh. Demons of Slaanesh. The demons of Slaanesh possess some elements of the perverse and unnatural beauty of their master, a beauty that provokes loathing and desire in equal measure. Their very presence evokes a tide of sensuality strong enough to drown a living soul, while the seductive promises can enslave even the stoutest heart. Their physical forms are both beguiling and monstrous, fairness and foulness intermingling to blast the soul of the viewer with their monstrous dichotomy. The greater demons of Slaanesh are called Keepers of Secrets, gorgeous, terrible beings that are said to hear the secret whispers made in every soul. Few can describe the sensations of shameful lust and dark ecstasy that attends a Keeper of Secrets, a heady toxin of fear and fulfillment that can shiver a mortal mind into pieces. Making a pact with a greater demon of Slaanesh is the most thrilling and dangerous thing to undertake in the universe. A Keeper of Secrets takes a gloating, sadistic pleasure in breaking down the last barriers to full ecstatic rapture, mercilessly shearing away the last dignities and presumptions of a snared soul until it is left naked and quivering before its bestial lusts. The lesser demons of Slaanesh, known as demonettes. They are lithe-bodied, crab-clawed creatures with attractive, pale faces marred by fanged mouths and green, saucer-like eyes. Their hypnotic, blasphemous beauty is as much a weapon as their razor-sharp claws, blinding their enemies with a mixture of revulsion and lust. Demonettes have been known to weave perverse sorceries with their lascivious dancing and singing, corrupting the senses and baffling the mind with altered realities. Their laughter charms the senses as the tinkling of delicate chimes, even as they precisely and painfully tear their victims limb from limb. Demonettes often ride upon weird bipedal beasts known as the steeds of Slaanesh. These are spindle-limbed, fleet-footed beings that are faster than any mortal steed, with impossibly long whip-like tongues protruding from their vaguely equine heads. The questing tongue delivers a paralyzing shiver of unholy ecstasy to whatever it touches, rendering its prey helpless before the attentions of its rider. Slaanesh is said to have little interest in the other Chaos powers, being too caught up in his own pleasures to be interested in alliances or cooperation. Slaanesh is said to have little interest in the other Chaos powers, being too caught up in his own pleasures to be interested in alliances or cooperation. However, the followers of Khorne with the boorish beliefs in bloodshed for its own sake are particular enemies. Cults dedicated to Khorne and Slaanesh clash frequently in the mortal realm, just as the demonic legions are believed to battle endlessly in the realm of chaos. Slaanesh's comparative weakness in direct confrontations is balanced by his endless capacity for corruption, often even leading Khorne's faithful astray through their own battle lust. A widespread and technologically advanced conflict is particularly vulnerable to Slaanesh's influence, as a single well-placed convert can have the means to wreck a fleet or destroy an entire city. Wherever Khorne's followers become most strident, those of Slaanesh can be found working subtly in the background to bring about their opponent's downfall. Tzeentch, the Changer of Ways. Quote, "You claim to be a plotter beyond compare because your plan anticipates failure and turns it to success. When your failures put schemes into motion that in turn flounder, only to spawn new designs whose failure is all part of some master plot. Then you still cannot master the schemes of the Changer of Ways." End of quote from Initial Eldar Warlock. Tzeentch is the Changer of Ways, the god of change and dark knowledge. Tzeentch is the inconstant yet the great eagle who pulls the strings of fate in whichever way he pleases. The minions and followers of Tzeentch manipulate the sorcery and psychic power of the warp in their rawest form, and often know the thoughts and fates of their foes even before they do. Not interested in raw strength, Tzeentch bestows his favor upon those who use their intelligence to fight their enemies. Mortal worshippers of Tzeentch tend to be sorcerers, psykers, scholars and other educated elites who desire greater knowledge and power. Some of these worshippers become very powerful sorcerers, but Tzeentch has a tendency to mutate his followers, and the highest levels of power are said to be difficult for his followers to reach, as they frequently find themselves mutated into mindless beasts like the Chaos Spawn. Those who retain great power in the service of Tzeentch, however, are extremely powerful foes who are often mighty sorcerers as well as great warriors. Tzeentch is as powerful as Khorne, but with a different style of power, controlling sorcery and psychic strength instead of armies. The plots of Tzeentch are countless, and whenever there is an alliance of chaos undivided forged by the gods of chaos, Tzeentch is undoubtedly the cause, direct or indirect. Tzeentch also represents optimism, hope and the willingness to change, thus making Nergal his nemesis. The enigmatic chaos power Tzeentch is known by many titles including the Changer of the Ways, the Master of Fortune, the Great Conspirator and the Architect of Fate. These titles reflect its masterly comprehension of the twisting paths of destiny, history, intrigue, and plots. The hopes and plans of every man and every nation whisper through its many-chambered mind. Its all-seeing eye watches as plots unfold and intrigues alter the course of history. Although far from the first to exhibit such traits, mankind is a notably volatile and ambitious species. Tzeentch feeds upon the need and desire for change that is so much a part of human nature. All men dream of wealth, freedom and a better tomorrow. The confluence of these desires creates a powerful impetus for change, just as the ambitions of leaders create a force that can change history. Tzeentch is the embodiment of that force. Tzeentch is not content to merely observe the fulfillment and disappointments brought by the passage of time. It works its own schemes, plans so complex and convoluted that they touch upon the lives of every mortal, whether they know it or not. Tzeentch's true intentions are hidden behind layer upon layer of interweaving plots so convoluted and so long-term that no mortal can hope to understand them. Perhaps Tzeentch plans to overthrow the other chaos powers, or to extend his dominion across mortal realms, or to achieve some unguessable apotheosis. Perhaps Tzeentch plots endlessly because that is its driving force, and its schemes can never achieve fruition as they twist constantly into new plans and conspiracies. Whatever Tzeentch's ultimate purpose, he pursues it by manipulating individual lives and thereby altering the course of history. The aura of magic and power around the god Tzeentch commonly draws influential people into its orbit, leaders, generals, and merchant princes looking for a way to pursue their ambitions or overcome their enemies. A glimpse of the future can be all that it takes to win a political conflict or close a deal. A simple spell might bury evidence of wrongdoing where no investigator would ever find it. All of these possibilities make irresistible temptations for those that dare to follow the path of Tzeentch. A subtle nudge here or there and these influential individuals can, in turn, enmesh millions of lives in Tzeentch's grand schemes, lending it a disproportionate amount of power in comparison to its number of followers. However, few of Tzeentch's plots are straightforward, and many at first appear contradictory or even seem to act against its own interests. Only the Changer of the Ways can see all the threads of potential futures weaving on the loom of fate. Of all the chaos powers, Tzeentch is said to be the most accomplished magician. Warp magic is one of the most potent of all the agents of change, and wielding it requires matchless ambition and hunger for power. Those who style themselves champions of Tzeentch are often sorcerers of the most powerful kind. Any individual that pursues the learning of warp lore eventually discovers Tzeentch and feels the subtle tug of the rewards it can offer. Of all the chaos powers, Tzeentch can appear the most rational and safest to deal with, granting huge dividends in exchange for seemingly inconsequential demands. Of course, it quickly becomes clear that once they're caught up in Tzeentch's schemes, there is no escape. Images purported to depict Tzeentch are rare, and normally conflicting in their nature. Some show him as having the characteristics of birds or fish, but most depict the master of magic as a long-armed, man-like figure with its face sunk low down between his shoulder blades. Huge, asymmetrically curving horns appear to spring from the figure's shoulders. Those that claim to have witnessed the Changer of the Ways in their dreams say that his skin crawls with constantly changing faces leering and mocking the onlooker. As Tzeentch speaks, these faces sometimes echo what he says with subtle but important differences, or provide a commentary that throws doubt on the words spoken. They say that the firmament about the architect of fate is heavy with brooding magic. Languid coils of essence weave like thick smoke around its head, forming subtle patterns. The vagrant forms of people and places appear in the vapors as Tzeentch's mercurial mind contemplates the fate. Demons of Tzeentch. Demons of Tzeentch are highly magical, with the lesser forms being entirely formed from constantly shifting patterns of unstable warp energy. Greater demons of Tzeentch are known as Lords of Change. These are described as massive, bird-like entities that are surrounded by a bright shifting aura of sorcery. The bodies and wings shimmer with 1,000 iridescent colors and the claws are said to be glittering diamonds. The gaze of a Lord of Change can penetrate the very depths of a mortal's soul, reading the thread of his fate and his ultimate destiny at a glance. Lords of Change are possessed of all the scintillating brilliance and deep wisdom of their master, but each is its own creature with its own agenda. It is not uncommon for the agents of different Lords of Change to clash in pursuit of their own schemes, no doubt by the design of Tzeentch himself. It is said that no being in the realm of chaos understands the flow of the warp as naturally as they do, and that bargaining for their help brings success in the most desperate of schemes. However, a pact with a Lord of Change is as convoluted and inescapable as a web of steel, and the soul of the supplicant is the price for even the smallest morsel of wisdom. The lesser demons of Tzeentch are living flames of warp energy that cavort and twist in time to insane piping. They flicker along with invisible patterns of change and fade in the Imperium, briefly whirling into existence where the winds of magic blow strongly enough. Mortals know of two kinds of Tzeentch lesser demons, horrors and flamers. Horrors of Tzeentch possess long, gangling limbs protruding from a thick, trunk-like torso with no head. The horror's leering face normally appears in its chest but may shift from moment to moment, slithering away to another part of their anatomy at random. Glowing warp energies wreath horrors with pink and blue light as they bray and cackle blasphemously, the sucker-tipped fingers drooling with warp stuff. In combat, horrors playfully pull apart their enemies and burn them with etheric fires. Striking them only splits them into miniature versions of themselves which caper and gibber with undiminished vigor. The so-called flamers of Tzeentch are even more strange and disturbing entities than the horrors. They display no man-like characteristics at all, appearing only as the thick trunk of living flame topped by waving tendrils spouting tongues of pink warp fire. An inhuman, beaked visage can sometimes be glimpsed on the torso of the being, but its voice is only the roar and crackle of flames. Demons of Tzeentch are capable of granting great powers to the followers. They may perform seemingly complex magical undertakings by instinct, making rites and summons with a level of energy that a mortal sorcerer could never dream of wielding. Thus, according to Tzeentch's unguessable whims, a mass of horrors might open a warp rift through the collective efforts, or just as likely close one, or disperse a dozen seemingly unrelated incantations, causing rifts to open or close in the future. Mention should also be made of the discs of Tzeentch, shark-like predators of warp space that are sometimes used as mounts by champions and demons of the Changer of the Ways. These beings take the shape of flattened, blade-like creatures rimmed with vicious teeth and spikes to slice through the prey. In the endless depths of the realm of chaos, shoals of these creatures mercilessly hunt lost souls, but Tzeentch's followers know the secrets of capturing them and binding them to service as fast and agile mounts. The antithesis of the chaos power Tzeentch is that of Nergal, the Lord of Decay. Tzeentch's energy is derived from the excitement and will to change, the desire to forge one's own destiny, refashion fortune and gain power. Nergal's power comes from a defiant brand of hopelessness and despair, a moribund acceptance of the way things are borne out and a determination to keep plodding forward regardless. In stark contrast, Tzeentch's followers are often drawn to spark change and revolution in civilized societies, endlessly challenging the established order and breaking open the body politic before it rots from within. Malice, the renegade god. Malice is the renegade god of chaos, the god of contention, vengeance and anarchy, the sworn enemy of the other four chaos gods and all they represent, though he is no friend of mankind either. He represents the absolute anarchy of true chaos and its tendency to turn even upon itself in its own randomness. He is, however, absent from the most recent editions of all the Warhammer games for copyright reasons. Chaos Undivided. Followers of Chaos Undivided venerate the force of chaos itself, seeing the four major chaos gods as a single pantheon to be worshipped equally as different emanations of the same universal force. Of all the worshippers of chaos, they follow chaos in its purest form. They can interpret the meaning of chaos in a variety of ways, including as a single god, worship the four major chaos gods equally, or favor one slightly over the others. The Chaos Lords and Demon Princes of Chaos Undivided are at an advantage in their ability to unite any of the forces of chaos under their leadership, even if they would normally worship opposing gods like Khorne and Slanesh. So the warbands dedicated to Chaos Undivided are always the most diverse. The majority of the traitor legions of Chaos Space Marines serve Chaos Undivided, including the feared Black Legion of Abaddon the Despoiler, the greatest champion of Chaos Undivided. Servants of Chaos. Quote, who pledged his loyalty? The War Master. Whom did we serve in faith? The War Master. From whom did we take our name? The War Master. Who was denied to us? The War Master. But whom shall we remake? The War Master. And who shall lead us to victory? The War Master. End of quote from the Black Legion Catechism. The Imperium is mighty and its reach is long, but the infinite realm of chaos is greater still. Even in the material universe, the Emperor's followers only control islands of light in a sea of darkness. There are many who do not want the protection of the Imperium, who defy its laws and seek to undermine its works. Even inside the Imperium itself, rebels and secessionists struggle constantly to throw off the chains of oppression, particularly among the lowliest underclasses created by the Priesthood of Terror. These are the peoples that have not forgotten the taste of freedom, those who would rather give the fealty to the uncaring ruinous powers than grovel before the corpse god of distant terror. Some are peoples who seek to escape from bondage and go to any lengths to secure their release. Others resist the power of the Imperium without truly knowing why they do so, motivated simply by conviction that they must fight against the tyranny it represents. All of these peoples are the servants of chaos, and knowingly or unknowingly they continue to fight in the long war begun by Horus 10 millennia past. Those who live without. The first group of those the Imperium brand as heretics are those who live beyond imperial control by living outside the boundaries of the Imperium of man itself. Though the Imperium is vast, its authority stretching from rim to rim of the galaxy, in reality, there are vast swaths of space unknown to the Imperium of man. These regions have many names, including but by no means restricted to the Outlands, Wilderness Space, and the Halo Stars. Within them, whole civilizations can rise, prosper, and fall, without once knowing of the wider Imperium that surrounds them. Just as the Imperium is vast beyond proper comprehension, so too are the renegade warbands too many and diverse to ever properly catalogue or define. Some may be feral tribes existing on worlds deemed too insignificant to warrant an imperial presence, their only contact limited to ambitious missionaries of the imperial creed and periodic orbital surveys by passing patrols. Others may be independent starships, mining operations, and whole colonies existing in regions too difficult for imperial void ships to reach. On occasion, entire star systems that have been isolated by warp storms for centuries re-establish contact with the universe and sensibly opt to keep themselves hidden from the Imperium. The Calyxes sector of the Segmentum Obscurus exists amongst the edges of the galaxy, an established bastion of imperial control amongst the hazy borders. Thus, it is surrounded by regions of space not under imperial control. The most prominent is the Coronis expanse in the halo stars, linked to the Calyxes sector by a fluctuating warp passage known as the Coronis Passage or the Moor. Beyond this passage, imperial rule ends, and all manner of human civilizations exist unknown and undiscovered. However, there are other outlands around the Calyxes sector as well, including the Hazaroth Abyss, the fringes of the Drusis Marches subsector, and the nomad space between the Calyxes and bordering Ixonid sector. These renegades are as varied as the regions of space they occupy. Some come from the savage worlds of the Coronis expanse such as Naduash and Vaporeus. Others hail from nomad or heretical clans such as the Meritech pirate clans that waged war against the Calyxes sector and were exterminated for the Pains many centuries ago. Many of the outlander clans that populate these regions hold that they have survived because they learned to honor the ruinous powers, firmly believing that the sacrifices to the dark gods bring bounty into their otherwise barren existence. Powerful psychodynasties dominate some of these groups, and others claim to be parties to demonic pacts forged by their ancestors when the Emperor still walked among the living. Frequently these peoples take the form of extended clans that share their knowledge only through the blood relatives, maintaining a level of know-how about ancient technologies or local warp space conditions that astounds outsiders. The Adeptus Mechanicus is particularly sensitive to the existence of such heretics, of which those in the Meritech clans are a particularly egregious example, and press other imperial authorities to mobilize and capture or kill them as a matter of priority. Even though some of these groups can trace an unbroken chain of antecedents reaching all the way back to the Age of Strife, imperial authorities view them all as smugglers, pirates, and renegades. Battlefleet Calyxes and other detachments of the Imperial Navy, such as Battlefleet Ixonade, destroy unregistered void ships as a matter of course and eliminate known pirate haunts whenever they can. In consequence, many renegade clans have learned to be extremely wary of taking actions that reveal their existence to the Imperium, and when they must do so they often use elaborate measures to disguise their activities. The ranks of the renegades are constantly being swelled by those driven out by the Imperium's policies, deposed nobles, defeated warriors, disillusioned theocrats, failing merchants, mutants, and unsanctioned psychers all find refuge in wilderness space. It is a savage existence. Many seize anything its owner cannot protect as a matter of course, although they respect armed strength and they understand how to deal for mutual profit. A clever and well-armed renegade can soon establish himself as a king on a feral world with connections to local pirate clans, and from there, his ambitions might take him back into imperial space to burn and plunder. Renegades like these are particularly abhorrent individuals to imperial eyes as they exploit the knowledge of the Imperium's defenses to lead attacks against vulnerable trade routes and colonies. Certain renegade communities cooperate with alien races for mutual profit, especially in common opposition to the Imperium. Orc mercenaries, Eldar corsairs or Strixus traders, in the case of those settlements within the Coronis expanse, may be frequent visitors at some renegade settlements. Within some alien empires, whole enclaves of humans exist ruled by xenos overlords that grant them freedom for their loyalty. It is impossible to say what bargaining and gifts may have been necessary to convince aliens to work with humans, although it may be that merely cursing the God Emperor and his Imperium was sufficient for some. The dangerous taint of zealotry and xenophobia remains strong about all humans, however, leading to some demand for the use as bodyguards among alien traders that enjoy intimidating their non-human clients. Smuggling xenos tech into the Imperium, along with other illicit goods, is a profitable activity, and the so-called cold trade into the Calyxes and neighboring sectors from the Halo stars is dangerously profitable in the eyes of the Inquisition's Ordo Calyxes. Rogue traders and Chartist captains can turn vast profits by meeting up with renegades in out-of-the-way star systems. There they can trade with them for goods that fetch vastly inflated prices in the Imperium. The risks are higher not only because the Imperial authorities may attempt to impound their ship and strip them of their license if they catch them. Reaver pirate clans sometimes simply cut out the middleman and seize a trader's cargo at the rendezvous. Dealing with renegades is always a risky business, as good relations with one group will not extend protection from all of them. Individual renegades sometimes slip into Imperial space to pursue the trade, but they find it a dangerous place to live. If caught and identified, they are tortured and executed by the Inquisition with no hope of mercy. Memory blocks and synaptic tampering are used by some groups, particularly the heretic VAOL clans of the Drusus Marchers periphery, to protect their operatives, or more accurately, the friends and loved ones they would put at risk if captured. Those who live within. For those with no love for the Emperor's laws, life inside the Imperium is a daily peril. Within a social system where the innocent are routinely persecuted, the guilty must stay especially on their guard if they hope to survive. For most citizens, the Imperium is nothing but a source of oppression and fear, and not all of those that cry out against the yoke of its authority is the dedicated servants of chaos. The religious intolerance of the ecclesiarchy persecutes entire belief systems by branding them as heresy and demon worship for the slightest deviation from the dogmatic and orthodox imperial creed. Psykers and mutants face a terrible fate at the hands of the Imperium, at best existing as a shunned underclass in those rare places where they are not executed on sight. Political parties, labor movements, guilds, and even criminal organizations that were once vilified by the citizenry can sometimes become their outlet for anti-imperial sentiment when the authorities tighten their grip. Fear of the Inquisition quickly drives these diverse groups underground to form a hidden network of cells and covens dedicated to the downfall of imperial rule. Secret cults of worshippers tend shrines dedicated to their ancient gods in secret while presenting a face of bland devotion to the god emperor in public. Humble workers toil in the factories while they plan revolution and the overthrow of their hated bosses. Wherever there is sedition and dissent, the conditions become ideal for the subtle spread of chaos. The lure of arcane lore and unearthly power exercises a fatal attraction for the ambitious and the desperate. All over the galaxy, even on Mars and ancient Terra, there are people willing to dabble in matters beyond their understanding in the pursuit of power or forbidden knowledge that will set them apart or above the peers. Not all of these realize they are dealing with the powers of chaos, innocently becoming involved through warrior societies or intellectual communities that may appear outwardly quite benign in nature. Often a chaos power is venerated under a different guise with a seemingly unconnected name, and a host of demon princes and lesser powers are worshipped by different cults with just as much fervor as those dedicated to the great powers of Khorne, Nergal, or Slaanesh. Some cultures devote themselves to chaos in its unaligned glory and see the powers of chaos as a pantheon of gods, a polytheistic outlook common in many tribal religions. Ecclesiarchy missionaries usually try to insert the god emperor into such belief systems, claiming him to be more powerful than the others, but change is slow to occur and the last vestiges of demon worship are notoriously hard to stamp out. Even pious-seeming monks and holy men may transpire to be followers of saints who possess, upon closer inspection, decidedly demonic aspects. Those who truly desire change sometimes go to the most extreme lengths to gain the power they need to effect it. Forbidden law, suppressed knowledge, and ancient pacts may offer routes to victory for an ardent freedom fighter or revolutionary where weapons and bombs fail to make an impact. On some worlds, the spread of law and industry rouses anarchists and madmen to oppose it. On others, gentrified nobility anxious to keep control of their lands might turn to the methods the forefathers used in earlier, dark ages. Even the most advanced and powerful imperial worlds have their own secret cults that have hidden themselves from sight for centuries, while their members work tirelessly to worm themselves into the position of power and authority. Such cults are a source of great concern to the Inquisition, none more so than those that actually manage to communicate with demons directly or, worse still, summon them from the warp. Those who live beyond. A well-established chaos cult has the potential to tip an entire world into chaos in a very literal sense. The greatest works of sorcery can open the gates of hell itself and unleash the demonic legions of the ruinous powers. As the mutating power of chaos saturates the world, it becomes a realm not entirely of the material universe and not entirely of the warp, a demon world where the laws of nature and reason have been completely usurped by the whims of the major chaos powers. Here demons roam freely and are constantly nourished by twisting winds of magic, and mortals become their playthings with a value only as chaos champions or slaves. Demon worlds are a sanctuary for the worshippers of chaos with the means and courage to flee to them. The Inquisition never rests in its efforts to eliminate the devotees of the ruinous powers, but a demon world defies even their shadowy reach. No one knows the exact number of demon worlds in the galaxy, nor whether all of them could truly be said to even exist within the galaxy anymore. Imperial navigators have reported worlds in the deep tides of the Imperium light years away from any star systems, and severe warp storms are said to have shifted entire planets across time and space. Certainly, the greatest concentration of demon worlds appears to be in the region of the segmentum obscurus called the Eye of Terror, the birthing grounds of the chaos power Slanesh, but many other demon worlds are spoken of in myth and legend in different parts of the galaxy. Some hold that every major warp storm in the galaxy has one or more demon worlds at its heart, the source of all the dangerous torrents of warp energy that sustain it and its unholy inhabitants. Untold billions of mortals exist on demon worlds. Their lives are entirely subject to the ruinous powers and are bodies marked by chaos. Many are destined to form war bands battling for the amusement of their masters, hurling themselves against one another while screaming praises to the dark gods. Others are arranged into shuffling prayer gangs that trace the path of vast runes visible only from space. Others might sift, weigh, and catalogue grains of sand in vast deserts, or endlessly build and then destroy monuments that defy sanity and science. The activities pursued with such vitality and fervor on demon worlds are often nonsensical and contradictory by nature, and apt to change at a moment's notice. A few demon worlds are dominated by the remnants of the Chaos Space Marine traitor legions that once followed Horus. They have become training grounds, forges, and armories for the legion's continuing prosecution of the long war against the Corpse Emperor. Entire regiments are razed and destroyed under the brutal regimes. The veteran survivors reformed and hurled into battle again and again to forge them in the crucible of war. On these hellish worlds, anyone is capable of climbing up from slave cannon fodder through hardened veteran to valued elite with sufficient skill and Ellen. The hardiest and most dedicated may someday win a place in the Legion and have the body broken by dark chirurgeons to be remade as something greater than human, if a new source of uncorrupted Astartes gene seed can be secured. The traitor legions teach their human slaves to hate the Imperium and to despise the Emperor with an unholy passion. Time runs differently on demon worlds, and veteran space marines that stood beside Horus still live on 100 centuries later in the Eye of Terror and other benighted places. They bitterly remember the defeat before the Imperial Palace during the climactic Battle of Terror and have sworn to have their vengeance against the false Emperor on the Golden Throne. Incalculable war has been unleashed on the Imperium by the traitor legions over the millennia since the Horus heresy. These so-called Black Crusades have ravaged the regions around the Eye of Terror and destabilized huge areas elsewhere in the Imperium. Even once the Imperium rallies its vast resources to reconquer territory lost to a Black Crusade, the indelible taint of chaos is left behind. On recaptured worlds, the incidence of psyches and mutations in the liberated populations leaps sharply, and cultist cells are always particularly active. The traitor legions attempt to erode Imperial power whenever they can, and some specialize in utilizing renegade and underground elements as parts of a larger conspiracy. Imperial Inquisitors are particularly alert for signs that cult or pirate activity may presage a larger invasion by the traitor legions, but with 1,000,000 worlds to protect, the task is a nigh impossible one. Demons. The Chaos Gods are not alone in warp space. They have created servants from their own essences, the creatures that mortals have named demons based on their ancient legends and religious mythologies, who are not so closely bound to the warp. Demons are entities of a somewhat different nature to their masters, and are the most numerous of the creatures to be found in the Empyrean. A demon is born when a Chaos God expends a portion of its own power to create a separate being. This psychic power binds a collection of senses, thoughts and purposes together, creating a personality and consciousness that can move within the warp. The Chaos God can reclaim the independence it has given to its demon children at any time, thus ensuring their loyalty. It is only through the loss of this power that a demon can truly be destroyed, its mind dissolving into the whirls and currents of warp space. Demons have no physical presence within the warp. The realm of chaos is anathema to the laws of physics, and the starships that navigate its depths do so by taking a skin or bubble of reality with them when they enter, using their warp drive. Instead of possessing a true physical form, demons project a form conjured from raw psychic energy that is essentially a lesser interpretation of their master's fundamental nature. Hence, the bizarre and inhuman appearances projected by demons indicate the presence, status and allegiance to a Chaos God. Though it may appear to be made of normal matter when it materializes in real space, a demon's form is no more physical than it is in the realm of chaos. In fact, they are beings of pure warp energy given shape and depth. When manifested in the material universe, demons have particular invulnerabilities and weaknesses, as well as many strange powers derived from their warp-born nature as psychic beings. Slaying a demon's physical projection does not kill it, but only severs its presence in reality. Its true essence in the warp remains unharmed. When a demon is killed in the material universe, it is banished back to the warp. If not simply reabsorbed by its creator, it must remain there to regain its strength, that it eventually might manifest itself again. Legend has it that a demon banished in this way cannot return for 1,000 Terran years and a day, though it is, of course, impossible to prove such a belief through study, and the concept of time itself is meaningless within the warp. The slight to its slain demon's pride is considerable, however, and the demon is forced to endure the mockery of its fellows until it can return to corporeal form and avenge itself. The most powerful demons will call upon any servants and tributary lesser demons to help them achieve their revenge. If it has many allies, it may also request their aid, though all demons are cautious in doing so. Such favors must inevitably be returned, and no demon welcomes the dominion of another creature, be it mortal or demonic. Demonic incursions. In order for a demon to break through into the mortal universe, there must be a breach of the barriers between warp space and the material realm, a warp rift. These are breaches in the fabric of reality that can vary in nature and size, such as the massive Eye of Terror or the Maelstrom. Sometimes these occur randomly, at other times, either mortals or the Chaos Gods themselves bring about their creation by some supernatural act. The size of the breach can vary tremendously, from a slight thinning of the dimensional walls to immense wounds in reality that allow the demonic legions to invade en masse. At times when certain conditions like the appearance of a warp storm or a sorceress ritual have weakened the barrier between the warp and real space, a demon can possess a mortal and turn him or her into a living portal through which whole demonic hosts can pass for a time into the material universe. These demonic incursions can taint real space severely, often twisting and reshaping whole planets until they're lost into the warp, becoming a part of the Imperium and thus transformed into demon worlds. It is not surprising that the Inquisition's demon hunters, the Ordo Malleus, are granted unlimited resources and political power by the High Lords of Terror to deal with such terrible threats to the continued existence of mankind. Often, it is the tumultuous movements of the warp itself that create a break into the material realm, allowing demons to spill through the resulting breach. This might happen by chance, events such as the onset of warp storms, warp drive implosions, or a rogue psyker's mind suddenly exploding with raw power can cause a rift to appear into the Imperium. At other times, the deliberate rituals and blood sacrifices of chaos-worshipping mortals can allow the teeming hordes of the chaos gods to smash through into the material realm. Sometimes, simple mortal suffering death and misery on a massive enough scale can form a warp rift that a demonic legion might use as a portal. Some warp rifts last mere hours, or even moments, for the nature of chaos is ever impermanent. A demonic army that has passed through such a rift can become trapped in real space and will swiftly succumb to the constant leeching of the chaos energy required to maintain its presence. Of these, the greatest and most dangerous warp rift is the Eye of Terror, which has lasted for more than 10,000 standard years. The eye can be seen as a purple-red bruise upon the firmament from fully half the worlds claimed by the Imperium. It was created by the birth of the chaos god Slaanesh in the early 30th millennium and is home to unnumbered demon worlds fought over by demons and mortals alike, the infamous traitor legions of the Chaos Space Marines amongst them. Another warp rift of excessive magnitude is the Maelstrom, found near the galactic core and a haven for thousands of pirates and renegade Space Marine chapters. Other, less widely known warp rifts exist, such as the Heart of Darkness near to the world of Atia, the Storm of Judgment that engulfs almost all of the Caradryad sector, Hell's Gullet, which threatens to swallow the Beryllian system whole, and the infamous Screaming Vortex that marks the border between the Calyxes sector and the frontier of the Coronis Expanse in the Halo stars. Random warp rifts are often caused by warp storms, roiling expanses of turbulence within the realm of chaos that are echoed in real space, restricting warp-dependent travel and communication. If they become focused or powerful enough, they can pull the fabric of reality taut or even tear it open. Completely unpredictable, warp storms can be isolated to single planets or expand to encompass whole sectors. One of the worst warp storms ever recorded in human history cut Terra itself off from the rest of the galaxy for the entire 5,000-year-long era known as the Age of Strife. The unfortunate worlds in the vicinity of such a cataclysmic event can become the playgrounds of demons until the storm finally expends itself. A few warp storms have endured for so long that they can be considered permanent, the self-sustaining energies trapping nearby planets and star systems in a quagmire of roiling chaos. Without the warp, there would be no psykers, no interstellar travel and no interplanetary communication. In fact, the warp is essential to the survival of humanity. Spacecraft travel through its shifting tides, capable of traveling thousands of light years in a fraction of the time a journey using conventional reaction drives at sublight speeds would take. By such means, humanity is bound in a single interstellar imperium, led by the divine emperor of mankind. Through astrotelepathy and the guidance of the psychic mutants known as navigators, the worlds of the Imperium are able to maintain their fragile bonds. The Emperor's will may be mighty, but his reach is long only because his fleets can travel through warp space, the fragile bubbles of reality that protect each warship held up by complex gala fields and raw faith. While mankind would have a fraction of its current numbers and strength without the warp, chaos in its turn would be much diminished without the presence of humanity in the galaxy. The Chaos Gods drink emotions and thoughts, growing bloated with psychic power in the process. Over the millennia, each has fed on an aspect of human nature: rage, desire, corruption, and inconstancy. Strengthened and molded by the collective thoughts and emotions of the inhabitants of reality, the Dark Gods nurture in mankind those same passions that sustained their very existence. As humanity has spread across the stars, its numbers have grown immeasurably, fueling the Chaos Gods. So the circle is established, with mortal follies and weaknesses feeding the Dark Gods, and those same gods then encouraging mankind in turn to further follies and weakness. Humanity has long been able to use the power of the warp. Magicians, seers, witches, mediums, shamans, and exorcists have all tapped into its power across the breadth of human history, albeit often unwittingly. Psykers such as these manifest the powers by drawing upon the warp, siphoning its unnatural energy to hurl blasts of energy, teleport objects, send the thoughts across space and time, and perform countless other miracles. Once, the gift of true psychic power was confined to only a few helpless individuals who usually fell victim to superstitious prejudice in mankind's distant past. However, the number of psykers is rising in the galactic population of humanity with every passing century. This constitutes a profound evolutionary change for mankind. Every time a psyker draws upon the warp, he disturbs its natural flow, creating an eddy that may simply die away or be fed by other movements until it becomes a raging tempest that feeds a chaos god. Each psyker causes a pinprick of disturbance within the warp, each can be the seed of a warp storm, each can rouse a chaos power to unthinkable conquest. The invasion of a demonic army is analogous to hell being unleashed upon reality. Free from the physical limitations of a mortal force, a demonic legion can appear and disappear at will. On occasion, it will mass for a great attack. At other times, individual packs of demons will hunt across the affected globe, terrorizing the populace, randomly enslaving and killing. Those mortals with even the least psychic potential suffer first as the influx of warp energy releases the latent power of their mind, immolating them with magical fire, turning them into rocky statues, or causing the brains to simply explode. Poltergeist activity and random bursts of pyrokinesis can ruin buildings in an instant. People hear deranged screams and lurid whispering whilst unnatural stenches taint the air. A demonic invasion is all but impossible to stop by conventional means, for the very act of fighting against demons feeds the psychic power, keeping them in real space with fear and hatred. Only the closing of the warp rift can deprive the demons of their power. Often, there is nothing that can be done but the battle against the incursion until the warp rift runs its course. Battles fought against a demonic incursion are utterly different than those against mortal foes, for defensive structures and garrisons have little to no effect. To wage war against invading demonic hosts, an army must be ready to respond to the most sudden appearances of its adversaries. To compound matters, the motivations behind demonic incursions are unfathomable. Even the Tyranids, who are so alien as to be beyond the comprehension of man, or for sustenance and survival. Instead of these base drives, the objectives of a demon commander will often be completely obscure. They might be to slay 1,000,000 mortals, to retrieve a single artifact, or to kill the children of those that once banished him back to the warp. Other times, the demons have no goal or plan at all, and the gibbering creatures of the Imperium make decisions according to opportunity and their intrinsic nature. The forces of chaos. The forces of chaos is a term applied by Imperial scholars to all the myriad servants of the ruinous powers of chaos who seek to destroy the Imperium of man and replace it with the utterly anarchic predominance of chaos. This is a state of affairs that would likely result in the eventual extinction of the human race and indeed of all sentient life in the Milky Way galaxy were it to come to fruition. For clarity's sake, most scholars divide up the forces of chaos into three major components, including the inhuman demonic entities that are native to the warp and only rarely impinge upon the physical universe, the lost and the damned, which includes among their numbers chaos cultists, traitor guardsmen, mutants and the other mortal devotees of chaos, and finally, chaos' most potent mortal servants, the traitor legions of the Chaos Space Marines and the counterparts amongst the heretics and traitor titan legions of the Dark Mechanicus. Imperial secrecy. To protect its citizens from the insidious temptations of chaos, the Imperium of Man does its best to hide the existence of the Chaos Guards, demons and the Chaos Space Marines from public knowledge. Only Space Marine chapters, Imperial Guardsmen, Sanction Psychos and the members of the Inquisition are permitted to know the Imperium's darkest secret. All others are either put to death or, if they have been a valuable servant to the Imperium, undergo memory modification or even, in extreme cases, a mind wipe. This is a policy that has been in place since before the Emperor of Mankind was interred within the Golden Throne, when only he and his primarchs knew that the warp contained intelligent entities capable of possessing individuals in real space. But even the Emperor did not reveal to his primarchs the truth that the warp was not just a seething cauldron of chaotic psychic energies, but was actually populated by a malign intelligence similar to the supernatural beings of ancient human myth and superstition that were the ruinous powers of chaos and the demonic servants. To fight the demon army is to fight a twisting tornado of unreason and despair. Even then, the Imperium cannot allow the knowledge that such foes actually exist to spread. The human survivors of such conflicts are invariably confronted by the Inquisition and mind-wiped, quarantined in forced labor camps, or even, in extreme cases, become the subjects of a worldwide exterminators event. Over the eons, the galaxy has witnessed warp-based catastrophes and demonic incursions beyond counting. Since the inception of the Imperial Inquisition in the early days of the Horus heresy, even the fact that such a thing is possible is deemed too dangerous for the citizens of the Imperium to know, for such knowledge breeds heresy as surely as a fly-blown corpse breeds maggots. Because of this, the vast majority of knowledge concerning demonic incursion has been eradicated from extant Imperial public records. What is known is recorded only in prescribed Imperial texts and heretical xenos scripts that the Inquisition has yet to destroy. The end. This part had a lot more information about chaos. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this audiobook, leave a comment and like. Visit my Facebook, Blogspot or Patreon. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.